welcome to episode 3 of Pins and Needles. My name is Zoe and you can find me on Instagram as Pins and Needles UK and I'm on Ravelry as BFG. So come and find me, click subscribe if you enjoy the podcast and make a new friend on Ravelry. Today is Saturday the 4th of June. It's a slightly overcast day here on the South Wales coast, but we've had some beautiful sunny days recently, so I really mustn't grumble. I will be including links to patterns and yarn and fabric that I mention up on the screen as I go through, but I will also put in the drop down bar on YouTube all of those details as well if you want to find them later. And I'll also try and include the timings, approximate timings of the various sections of my podcast. So if you want to skip the general chat at the beginning or jump straight to a different section, just have a look and you can go straight to the parts that you'd like to start with. Well, it's been half term, which means that I've had my 3 children at home for a week. And I've had to continue working, so it's been a bit hairy, but as I said, we've had some lovely weather. So lots of trips to the beach, lots of pyjama days, and we've had a nice easy time of it. My work schedule has changed up a bit as well, so I'm still 3 days a week, but they're slightly differently arranged and they're slightly longer days as well. So I'm looking at about a 10 or 11 hour day, but I get the rest of the week at home. So that's absolutely fine. The one fun thing I did for me this week that I wanted to share with you is that on Monday, my friend Alex very kindly bought me a ticket and took me to go and see Caitlin Moran give a talk on her new book. Now, there's a very famous book festival in the UK called the Hay-On-Wye Book Festival. Hay-On-Wye is a beautiful little town on the Wye River, just on the border between England and Wales. And every year they set up a tent city on the outskirts of the town, right in the countryside. And it's stuffed with tents where loads of authors of all sorts come and promote their new books. They give hour-long talks and interviews. They do workshops for new authors. They do fantastic things for kids, book signings and creative events. So it's really, if you can get to it, if you're in this country, really do go along. It's on every year. So we went to see Caitlin Moran, who is an international best-selling author and a regular columnist for the Sunday Times magazine, if you're in this country. Now, she's probably best well known for her writing about feminism, which I know the word feminism puts a lot of people off, but she's absolutely hilarious, very tongue-in-cheek, but still makes some really stinging points. So she had an hour-long talk. It was sort of an interview, and she read excerpts from her new book and answered questions from the audience. And I'm really glad I went. Her most famous work is probably called How to Be a Woman, which is her thoughts on feminism and being a woman in the 21st century. And if you haven't read it, you really must go and buy a copy. My husband has read it as well. He thought it was hilarious. And as soon as my children are old enough to understand, they will all be reading it. So we queued up at the end to go and meet her, which it wouldn't normally be something I'm interested in doing, but I'm just such an admirer of her work. I think she's so funny, and I think what she's writing about is incredibly important. So I just wanted to go and meet her and thank her for her work and let her know what it meant to me. So I treated myself to her new book. I know it's spelt Caitlin, but it's pronounced Caitlin. I don't know why. But you can see that's her on the front cover. Look, she's pretty wacky, absolutely hilarious. And just to give you a bit of a clue, if I read you, it's a series of articles, this book, some from the newspaper she writes for and some new ones. And some of the titles of her works are In Defence of Hipsters, Bacon, I Propose Not Having Opinions on Women for, say, 5 years, Mums Are Superheroes. What else has she got? And then she does write about a lot more serious topics. She's got an article in here called Syria, a Man on a Roof, Je suis Charlie, and again, just for laughs, the Fruminous Cumberbatch. She's got a bit of a soft spot for Benedict Cumberbatch. Anyway, if you've got some spare cash, get yourself a copy of anything by Caitlin Moran. She's also written a novel, How to Build a Girl, and that's based on her book, How to Be a Woman. Fantastic novel. This is my friend Alex's copy, so that's going to be my reading for the week. Right. On to the crafting content. So this is my pins section, all about my sewing attempts and what I get up to with my machine. I showed you last week some fabric, not last week, 2 weeks ago, last episode, some lovely fabric that I treated myself to from Butterfly Fabrics in Cardiff. And the pattern I was going to make with it was this one. Here we are, look, Tilly and the Buttons Bettine dress. I love her patterns, they're really easy. Again, I did show you last week, but another quick peek. Lovely clear photographs, lots of instructions. So that was the pattern I was going to make. Now I was hoping to get the dress completely finished to show you, and I wanted to be wearing it today, but I didn't manage it, I'm afraid. As I said, it's been busy with the kids home. So again, because I'm new, I really wanted to make a good job of this dress. But I did manage in the time to make myself a toile. Now that's just a practice version of a garment in some scrap fabric, old sheeting, calico, muslin, anything you can find that's cheap. So this is just some cheap calico that I bought from IKEA. I took the waist out. It's got an elasticated drawstring waist, which I took out when I was altering it. But you can see the pockets that I made. I only finished one sleeve properly, but it's got a nice turned cuff, and it's got facings on the inside, and you can see from the shape of the arm, it's a simple pattern. It's like a kimono sleeve. I haven't tried setting sleeves in yet, so I thought this was quite a good place to start. And the nice thing about making a toile is you can make any adjustments to the paper pattern that you feel you might need. You can make it up, try it on, and see if those changes actually fit without worrying about cutting into your fashion fabric. So originally I took my measurements, compared it to the information on the back of the envelope, and I made a 6 on the top, and I graded out to a 7 at the waist. The waist and hips, I'm slightly pear-shaped. As it turns out, I'm a 6 at the waist, but I'm a 7 across the shoulders. I lift weights, I've got big chunky shoulders and quite muscly arms, so this fitted, but it was a bit tight, especially the circumference of the arms, and I noticed it was pulling. You might be able to see the creases on the fabric, it was pulling here. So I decided that for my fashion fabric, I definitely cut a 7 for the top. As I said, the waist is elastic, so I could just draw that in a little bit extra if I wanted. Now, again, if you can see from the pattern, the hips on this dress are really quite pronounced, and that's a design feature which I thought I quite liked. As I said, I'm pear-shaped, so I thought that might give me a bit more wiggle room. When I tried on the toile, I nearly died laughing. The hips came out so much, it looked like I was wearing +4s. You know when you see pictures from the 1920s of golfers, and they've got knee-high socks with tight trousers tucked in, and then the top of their trousers balloons out around their thighs, and it's about 6 inches wider than they need to be. That's what I looked like in this dress. It was just, oh. So I knew I needed to do something about that. So let me show you. The way that this dress is constructed is the front skirt piece has this cutaway for the pocket. So you've got, when you're sewing it together, you've got the back of the skirt, you've got the front pocket bag, you've got a front pocket facing, and then you've got the front skirt. So when you're doing the side seams, there's actually an awful lot of fabric for your needle to go through. And if I wanted to alter the pattern pieces to remove some of the width, it was going to be a lot of redrafting. So I turned this inside out, and I put it back on, and I just pinched the fabric down the side, and tried to get a feel for how much I wanted to take in. So I had a little feel, put some pins in, and I decided that what I could do, rather than altering the pattern pieces, I was just going to take a larger seam, make a larger seam allowance through that curve. I measured in with a ruler 1/4 of an inch, actually on the toile, drew in a new line in biro, machined it, tried it back on, much better. And also the pattern calls for drapey fabric, and this is not drapey fabric. It's still woven, but it's quite, it's not thick, but it's quite crisp, it's quite crunchy. So I'm sure that didn't help. I'm sure that made it look a bit more exaggerated than it would do in the final fabric. This is my fashion fabric. I showed you this last week. This is rayon, still woven, but much drapier. You can see the extra drape on that. So I'm sure it'll all look a bit better anyway when I get round to it. So I made that toile. I made my alterations. I added 2 inches to the waist. Well, the bodice. The bodice is quite long because it blouses over the elasticated waist. So it's quite a long bodice piece anyway, but I'm 6'1", so I needed extra length, so I added 2 inches to the waist, and I added 4 inches to the skirt. Those alterations were easy peasy to do. There's a cut here to lengthen line, so I just snipped across, spread the pattern, stuck some paper behind it, and redrew the lines in down the side. Not a problem there. So yeah, the toile fits really nicely. I like the way the scoop neck lies nice and flat. I was really pleased with that. And then last night, I'd had a busy day. I'd spent the morning doing paperwork and accounting stuff. And then a friend came over with her little boy, and we all went down to the beach and swam and dug holes with Jim the dog and bought churros as a treat. So I was pretty shattered by the time I got home, and I laid my fashion fabric out on the dining room table to cut. And I try not to cut out my paper patterns. I use a tracing wheel and carbon paper. So you have the fabric, and then you lay the pattern on the top, and you slide carbon paper in between the two and go over it with a roller. And the roller pushes the carbon paper into a dotted line that marks your fabric. But I just couldn't see the dots. There's something about the colour of that fashion fabric on the wrong side. I tried different colours of carbon paper. I couldn't see it. So I gave up and ordered takeaway curry and watched television with Dave instead, because I really didn't want to mess up my beautiful fabric. I mentioned last episode about a video blog, a podcast by Katie of Inside Number 23, and how she talked about body image and how you should just don't put off making things. And that's why I decided to go for the Bettine dress. Make yourself something to fit the body you have now and learn to love it. And while I was watching and reading other podcasts and blogs online this week, I came across an old article along similar lines, along the lines of just do it. And it's a blog called Closet Case Files. You can find it at www.closetcasefiles.com, and it's written by a Canadian lady called Heather Lou. Now she has some quite famous patterns. I don't know if you've heard of the ginger jeans or the Bombshell swimsuit, but this is that lady. She has a fabulous blog, really interesting, what she's making, what she's designing, loads of tutorials on her patterns. She also does some interesting sort of crafty business articles if you're interested in that. But the article I was particularly keen to mention to you was something she wrote in January of this year, and it's called Just Make It Already, How to Boost Your Sewing Confidence. I found it on my iPad, just so you know, if you try and find it, that's what it looks like. I absolutely love this article. And it's about not delaying doing something crafty and making yourself something. Katie from Inside Number 23 approached that from a body image perspective. And Heather from Closet Case Files has approached it from a fear factor. I'm not good enough yet. I don't want to waste the fabric. What if it looks awful? And I really recommend going and having a read. You've just got to do it. And I wanted to read you just a couple of extracts from it. She says, if you can thread a bobbin, you can make a shirt. If you can sew a zigzag stitch, you can make a bra. If you can cut fabric, you can make a pair of jeans. The only thing stopping you is the little voice in your brain that's whispering, you can't do it. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. And when you fail, you will only show everyone what a great big fraud you really are. And she says that that voice must be stopped. So you've just got to do it. You've just got to do it. You've got to go for it. You've got to practice and you've got to learn. So go and have a read of that article. It gave me a bit of a confidence boost to buy some nice fabric and use it. Not buy nice fabric and put it in a box for the future when I'm magically better at sewing. Just do it. So go and have a look at that article. That was really fancy. So I've got my fabric pieces cut out for the Bettine dress. They're all ready to go. I had a bit of drama with it. I struggled to see the markings, as I mentioned. So in the end, I had to cut the paper pattern, just old school, lay it out, pin it out and cut it with scissors. I usually prefer a tracing wheel, but it just wasn't happening. It was all shifting around too much. So I've got all that cut out and ready to go. But in terms of finishing various pieces on this dress, the pattern calls for you to either use a zigzag stitch, which you can do on a normal machine, or to overlock the edges. And overlocking just gives it a nice, neat, professional finish. And I have an overlocker, and it scares the bejesus out of me. Oh my God! You turn it on, and it's got whirring blades, and it's really loud. It goes like this. Oh, and I've had a try, and it frightens me. But I really want this dress to be beautiful, and I want to make my best effort. So I treated myself to a Craftsy class. www.craftsy.com. Fantastic website, online classes full of all sorts of things. And I bought myself a class called Beginning Serging by Amy Allen. Serging, overlocking, same. It was about $20. I can't quite remember exactly. And it's a series of video lessons taking you from complete beginner all the way through getting to grips with your machine. And the lovely thing is, if you can't actually attend a class at your local sewing shop, you've got someone talking to you. The filming and the video techniques are wonderful. You really get good, clear close-ups of various stages of the process. Amy Allen is a wonderful teacher, and it really is a very comprehensive class. I wrote down some of the classes. There's your serger and how it works, basic and decorative stitches, troubleshooting and serger feet, and then there's 3 patterns that she takes you through how to make, which is a box bag, an apron and a knit scarf. So I bought that quite a few months ago now, maybe even a year ago, and I've watched some of the lessons, but I've not actually done it. I've not been brave enough to have a go. So I'm going to do what Closet Case Files suggest. Feel the fear, do it anyway, and learn something new so I can finish my insides beautifully on my Bettine dress. And the insides will look as nice as the outsides. So I'm going to give that a whirl. And by next episode, I promise, cross my heart, hope to die, I will be wearing my Bettine dress. In terms of sewing purchases, nothing terribly exciting. I did buy myself a sewing magazine. I very rarely buy these. I read a lot of blogs, I watch a lot of podcasts, and that gives me all the new information and tutorials and pictures of nice fabric that I want. I do subscribe to an online magazine called Seamwork, which I might talk a bit more about next time. But anyway, the nice thing about buying a nice magazine, one that you can actually hold in your sweaty little hands, is they often come with a free pattern. So I bought myself the June issue of Sew, Style and Home. I'm not into home sewing. I might make some curtains at some point. But the point of this was that they always come with a free pattern. And this one came with New Look K6483, which is a basic, oh, there we are, a basic t-shirt pattern. Quite handy. Technically, it says 1 hour easy sewing time. Well, I'll believe that when I see it. But as well as the rayon fabric I bought for my Bettine dress, do you remember the toucan fabric I showed you last week? I'm going to make myself this one. Can't quite see it. It's got a scoop neck and quite a small shoulder section. So similar to this blue one, but much smaller shoulder straps. Rayon is a suggested fabric on the back, and you know, it's going to take me an hour. We'll see. So that's my other sewing plans. So yes, progress on the Bettine, plans for making up the toucan fabric. So I felt like it's been a good 2 weeks for sewing. I felt like I've moved forward a bit and made some progress. I would have liked to have finished the dress for you, but I want to do it properly, so you'll have to wait. On to needles, my knitting section. Now I've got finished objects. Well, mostly finished. I haven't woven in the ends. But if you've been following me on Instagram, you would have seen this yesterday. We had some gorgeous weather. So I frantically finished the bind off and blocked and pinned out my 3-colour cashmere shawl. This is a pattern by Joji Locatelli. You can find it on Ravelry. It's a page 4 pattern, and it's the 3-colour cashmere shawl. She also does a cowl version of this, and I absolutely love it. So it starts with wide bands of colour with some eyelets in, and the last time I showed you this, I was halfway through the stripe section, and I told you I couldn't stop knitting it, and I wasn't wrong. I couldn't stop. And then you get a colour band, a little bit of lace, there we are, and this really pretty but very time consuming picot bind off. Now the purple is Travelknitter pure merino sock in their colourway Highlands. The cream is undyed lace weight merino by Owl About Yarn, and I held that doubled. And then the colour band in the middle is Arucania Ranco in colour 307. And this was some scraps that I had left over, so I was quite pleased to use those up. It's a crescent shape. It's absolutely enormous. I'm going to disappear for a moment. Look at the beauty of that. It's absolutely lovely. The thing with crescent shaped shawls is the top edge can get a little bit tight, and so often by the end you get the ends, they sort of twirl round on each other, but it's not a problem. I have got a lot of ends to weave in. I'm going to try and put it on now so you can see what it looks like on. I still haven't quite figured out what to do with it. Yes, there you are, look. Lovely, cosy, and yeah, twirly bits at the end. So I'm thrilled with this. I absolutely love it. It is, it's all fingering weight, so it's a fairly lightweight shawl. Be nice for summer. Although I do live on the beach, it does still get cold in Wales in the summer and quite breezy, so this will just be nice. I can scrunch it up like this. I can wear it over my shoulders, just an extra layer to keep me warm. So that was my finished object. I will weave in the ends tonight. I was unsure with the stripe section. It's only 2 rows in each colour, there and back. And I wasn't sure whether to drop the other yarn each time and have a million ends to sew in, or whether I carried them up the side. And with cream and a very dark purple, I wasn't sure if carrying the yarn would work. But if I show you the wrong side, knitters always want to see the wrong side, I did carry it up, and I think I got away with it actually. It doesn't look too bad. There's the back, and there's the front. So it doesn't, the purple doesn't show through on the cream section, so I was quite pleased with that, because that would have been another 20 ends to weave in, and nobody's got time for that. So yes, that's my finished object. 3-colour cashmere shawl. Go and make yourself one. Absolutely gorgeous. That was a knit along ages ago in the Grocery Girls group on on Ravelry. I think there's me and one other knitter still going, bringing up the rear. But yeah, really enjoyable knit, really addictive, and I enjoyed that very much. So I'll sew in the ends tonight when I'm watching TV with Dave, and then that will be properly finished. Oh, I have, as well as a finished object, I have a hoe, which is a half-finished object. Look, these are my Zigzagular socks. Now, the last time I showed you these, I was there. That's my progress keeper from Atomic Knitting. So these are cuff down, so I was there and I knit all the way down there, all the way down there, and I finished. I did my first ever Fish Lips Kiss heel. Again, pattern on Rav, it's $1 Australian, so treat yourself to it. It's a short row heel, but it's super duper clever. I don't normally like short row heels, but I was taking part in the Grocery Girls Fancy Feet knit along, and you have to try a new technique. So I was cabling without a cable needle for these sections. I still can't cable without a cable needle for when you hold the stitch to the back. Can't work it out, but I'm doing it for the front. And then my Fish Lips Kiss heel, it doesn't fit terribly well on my homemade sock blockers, but it was easy as pie to do. And you can see, look, no gaps, no picking up stitches. Genius heel. I was really pleased with it, and it fits nicely, so do give it a go. You have to, the Fish Lips Kiss heel, as I said, is paid for, so I won't give any secrets away. But you have to make yourself a cardboard foot, which I did. I've got enormous feet. Size 10, UK 10 feet. So you have to stand on some cardboard, cut out your foot, mark some lines on it, and then this is a great way of measuring how far down your sock you are and when to start the heel or when to start the toe. So rather than having to wrestle a tape measure and try and squish your knitting out flat, you can just tuck this inside your whip, and you'll know when to start the new section. So yes, I have a half-finished object, and I have cast on the second sock. I don't have a problem with second sock syndrome. I quite like the flow of a project, so onto the second sock is not a problem. That's how far I've got. Look, I've got another inch or two, and then I can start the heel again. Now I have made myself some sock blockers. When I was trying to show you these socks the last time, you couldn't. It was really hard to show you the cable on the front because when they're not on a blocker, it squishes up like this and you can't see the pattern. So I was complaining to my friend Jenny from Owl About Yarn, and she said, "Oh, I just made some. I didn't want to pay £15. I had a look on the internet, found a tutorial, and I made some. So I thought, right, I'll do that." So I went to IKEA to buy some placemats, and I came out with placemats, half a dozen new glasses, and a new smalls error. Like you do. You can't go to IKEA and just buy the one thing you came for. So yeah, these are my homemade sock blockers. I think the placemats were maybe £1 each. They're quite big, like big squared off ones, and I found this funky red pattern. And literally all I did was I got a sock and I laid it out and I drew around it. I'll show you on the back. Can you see bits of my Sharpie? That's all you do. Make sure the edges are nice and rounded. And then presto Shango, dirt cheap sock blocker. So go and have a go at making yourself some of those. So yeah, my finished shawl, my half-finished sock. What else have I got to talk to you about? Do you remember that I was struggling with my cold sheep? I was struggling not to buy yarn. Well, I didn't buy yarn. I still haven't bought yarn, which I think is very impressive. But I did treat myself to a new project bag. Now, I'm a huge Grocery Girls fan. I absolutely love them. And Joji, who's one half of the Grocery Girls, makes the most amazing project bags under the name Mrs. Brown's Bags. And I bought one. Oh, it took nearly 2 weeks to get here. So here's her beautiful card. You can find her at mrsbrownsbags.etsy.com. And again, I'll put all of this in the notes at the bottom. There's her lovely card. And look at the back with a little button. It says, "Thank you so much for your order. I love this card." And I bought myself, are you ready? Da 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 da! Yay! This is her Andy bag in the colour Periwinkle. She's ever so clever. She bought some Malabrigo Rios yarn and she knit a big old square up, big square like this. And then she took a photo of it and then she sends that to an online fabric printing company who print up fabric. So this isn't knitted, this is cotton fabric with knitting printed on it. And she's got a lovely tab and a nice leather tab pull and a little tab on the side that says Mrs. Brown's Bags. I absolutely love it. It's the 2 skein size, so it's really nice and roomy. I've had my, let me show you, I've been keeping my socks in here. So there's the ball and the yarn, and if I pull this one off my amazing new sock blocker and tuck it in, and you can see plenty of space. You've got loads of extra space in there, and the inside, if I show you, I've got my pattern in there and my row counter, and the fabric inside is just beautiful lilac with printed flowers on. It wasn't cheap. I think I paid, by the time I paid shipping, it was about £25, but worth every penny. A lovely lilac zip on the top, so it all matches, and I'm absolutely thrilled with this. So that's my yarny purchase. Sorry, not sorry. I love that. So I'm a whip short. Now that I've finished my cashmere shawl, I need something else to knit. I always have several projects on the go. I'm not usually a monogamous knitter. I always have one complicated thing, one medium thing, and usually one sock. So my complicated thing was the lace shawl. Although it wasn't complicated, it was big and there was lots of yarn wrangling to do with holding different yarns doubled. And I've cast that off. I need a new complicated pattern. So I decided to cast on, well, I haven't done it yet. I just found the pattern and the yarn today. I need to try and show you this without giving the pattern away. So this, I'm going to knit some mittens for my mum, and I'm going to knit the Perianth mittens by, just checking my show notes here, Barbara Gregory. Again, you can find it on Ravelry. And there is a picture of the mittens. It's not the best photograph in the world, but basically it's a flower design. Colourwork, flowers. And I made my mum a lovely pair of colourwork mittens several years ago. Absolutely beautiful. They were navy and cream. They're in my projects on Ravelry. If you're curious, go and have a look. They were classic Scandinavian patterns, crosses in diamonds. They came to a lovely point at the top, and they had a Latvian braid and a picot folded hem around the wrist. And she absolutely loved them. They were quite light and quite slim, so she tucked them into her coat pocket, and she always had them with her, absolutely loved them. But she lost them. She was absolutely mortified, but she lost them. It was when my grandmother was in hospital with a hip fracture, and Mum was dashing in and out, and she always had bags of stuff, clean 90s, new magazines, tasty treats to eat. And I think somewhere in Warwick Hospital, hiding somewhere, is a beautifully knit pair of Latvian mittens. I hope somebody found them and kept them, because I'd like to think that they're still being used and they weren't just thrown away and they're not gathering dust in the lost property. But Mum was absolutely distraught because she was so in love with the mittens and I'd put a lot of work into them, and she was beside herself. And I was absolutely thrilled. I know that sounds odd to be pleased when someone loses something they've knitted you, but she'd had them 3 or 4 years by now, and it gave me the chance to knit her another pair. There was an interesting bit in one of the Stephanie Pearl McPhee's books. Have you read any of the Yarn Harlot blog? She has an article in one of her books about what if we only ever got one pair of mittens for our whole life. Just one pair. Just imagine it if nobody ever lost their mittens. Well, for a start, you'd never get to knit very many. And the pressure to choose the exact perfect pattern and yarn combination would be paralysing. So she welcomes lost mittens, and so do I. So I said to Mum, no, that's not a problem. I would love to knit you a new pair. So that's the Perianth pattern. And the yarn I'm going to be using this is Miju Wools. It was a present to me from Sarah from my Knit Night group for my birthday. And it's a lovely multicoloured sock yarn. It's sort of berry pinks with shots of sort of grey and a little bit of purple and almost a green. So I'm going to do the background in this. I've lost the yarn label, so I know it's a sock wool blend, so it's got nylon in it, so it'll be nice and strong and she can wash them, but I don't know the colour, and it's a few years old. So there's that one. And then I've got a ball of Regia. This is their 4 Fadig in colourway 01933, and that's going to be the flowers. I think it might end up being the other way around. I need to check how much yarn I've got, but I think they're going to go together rather well. And pink suits my mum, so those are my yarn choices. So I'm going to cast those on this week. It'll be a chart, and I'll have to concentrate on what I'm doing, so it'll be quite complicated. The pattern, can you see? It's got a ribbed cuff. Oh, yes, up here, look, just a normal ribbed cuff. And I think, again, I'll have to check my yarn amounts. I think I'm going to try and do corrugated ribbing, which is knits in one colour, pearls in the other. So that might make it look a bit fancier. I'll have to check. So I'll be casting that on sometime this week. So I'll have a new thing to show you. Oh, and then the last thing, it's not terribly exciting, my travel socks. I'd finished the first sock last week. I haven't done a huge amount on this boring sock because it's boring and I'm bored of it and it's dull. But that's how far I've got. So again, there's my little atomic knitting stitch marker. So I'd done the cuff. I'd got as far as the cuff last time, and in 2 weeks I've knit some leg. These have got to be knit to 7 inches, so I've got quite a bit more to go. I'm in work tomorrow, and with it being summer weather and the students have gone home, my business will be fairly quiet, so I might get a few cheeky rounds. I'd like to get to the heel flap, because once I've done the heel flap and turn, I feel like I'm on the home stretch, even though these are enormous monster man socks. So I'm cracking on there. I'll get through it. Ooh. I nearly zipped the sock yarn into the zip of my bag. Right, well, I think that's it from me this week. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. As I said, check in the drop-down bar at the bottom for timings, patterns, designers, blogs, podcasters. I'll put all of that down in there. If you like the video, do give me a thumbs up. I like a thumbs up, makes me feel loved. And subscribe if you're interested, and then you'll get notified when a new one is up. I will be back in 2 weeks' time in my new Bettine dress. I will be wearing my new dress. And hopefully I'll have finished my socks as well, because the Grocery Girls Fancy Feet Knit Along finishes on the 14th of this month, so I've got to get cracking. Right, thanks for spending some time with me. Happy knitting, happy sewing, happy crafting, and I will see you in 2 weeks' time. Bye-bye.